Little roller up along first. Behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
A 2-1 pitch. And a drive in the air to deep right field. That ball headed toward the wall. That ball is out of here! Out of here! A game-winning grand slam home run off the bat of Robin Ventura.
And it's hit deep to left center. Andrew Jones on the run. This one has a chance. Home run! Mike Piazza, and the Mets lead 3-2.
High fly ball to left. Back at the wall, and the captain's going deep 2-1.
Turner drives one to center, chasing Nimmo back to the warning track right at the fence. He made the catch! Oh, wow! The catch of the year from Brandon Nimmo! He took a home run away from Justin Turner! Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
And welcome to another episode of the Say Hello podcast. My name is Casey Lynn, and I am joined by former Major League pitcher, former Met Bill Pulsipher, as we are underway, unbelievably, episode number 14. This episode is brought to you by roots-recordings.com, and a special shout out to our producer, Steve White, behind the scenes, and of course, everyone listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube at Say Hello Media and listening wherever you get your podcasts. We're all over the place. Google, Spotify, you name it, Apple, of course. And first and foremost, Mr. Pulsipher, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. It has been a week, as the Say Hello podcast is a weekly podcast. There's a lot of different ways we could go. A lot has happened in the last 48 hours. Let's start with something that happened a couple days ago, the World Series, as we were speaking about it last episode, and we didn't know at that time what the outcome was going to be, Rangers and Diamondbacks, and finally we could put a bow on the 2023 regular season and postseason with the Rangers winning 4 games to 1 in the World Series. What were your thoughts on the World Series? Rangers' first World Series ever in their history.
I think it was competitive, even though it was 4 games to 1. I think both teams played relatively well. Surprised, obviously, that the Diamondbacks made it as far as they did, and the Rangers were just a juggernaut in the playoffs throughout the whole. Would they lose 1 game in the playoffs? So they were a powerhouse, and I think that they're going to continue to be a very competitive team.
Yeah, I was kind of. I didn't understand how the Diamondbacks lost all that magic to be basically swept at home in the final 3 games of the World Series. They went back 1-1 to Arizona and lost all 3. I was surprised by that, but it just shows you home field in baseball. I mean, it just showed this year, at least, very much so. I believe the Rangers won every game on the road. Home field doesn't mean all that much in Major League or baseball.
Yeah, I think, obviously, like we said, anything can happen in baseball, and it usually does. I just think that the Texas Rangers were the better team. Obviously, they went through some struggles right towards the end of the season, but then they got hot at the right time, and they showed what they were made of, and they were just too much for the Diamondbacks. Obviously, the Diamondbacks were a little less experienced too. They had a little more veteran presence on the Rangers, and they were something else.
And put a Met tie into that as well. Congratulations to all the Mets that were involved, or former Mets. Bruce Bochy, manager, 4-time champion now, first ballot Hall of Famer. Of course, Jacob deGrom, who only had 30 innings, I believe, under his belt for that ring. Scherzer, who pitched a little bit as well, helped out in the regular season, not so much in the postseason. Travis Jankowski, Chris Young, their general manager, former Met. And who am I forgetting? There is one other. But I believe that covers it all, actually.
I think it is.
Yeah, congratulations to them. First ever World Series for the Rangers. could not imagine how their fans feel, seeing that first championship parade.
You know, one thing to go back to last podcast with Hondo passing, I thought it was kind of fitting that the Rangers end up winning the World Series, being that Hondo was actually the first person to hit a home run as a Texas Ranger. So kind of strange and kind of cool how things work out in baseball sometimes.
Same week that he passes away, they win their first ever.
Yep.
Yeah, that is kind of coincidental and fitting. So
yep.
It's a good tribute, again, to Frank Howard.
Absolutely.
So we have some big news in Mets land that I'm sure everybody has been talking about and will be talking about for the foreseeable future. As we discussed on previous podcasts, Craig Counsell and basically just Craig Counsell of who the Mets probably will bring in to be their next manager after they fired Buck Showalter. And it turns out Craig Counsell went to the Cubs. No one saw that coming, especially Brewer fans. A record $8 million a year, 5 years, $40 million record. It was a little bit more, I think, than Joe Torre when all said and done. He said that he wanted to set the standard for managers and salaries. Open about that. Carlos Mendoza, new manager for the Mets. There's a lot of different ways we can go about this because the Brewers and their owner, their fans, they're mad. Because the Brewers and the Cubs, that's a rivalry right there. They're only 90 miles away from each other, and no one saw that coming. So I wanted to get your take first, I guess, on the Craig Counsell situation. I have my thoughts before we get into the new manager of the Mets, Carlos Mendoza.
Obviously, not what we were thinking or expecting or hoping, maybe, but I guess it makes sense. He was talking about wanting to take a year off to be around his family. So maybe, being, like you said, 90 miles away keeps him relatively close on off days. He can go home. He definitely probably made a lot of Brewers fans very angry as I played for the Brewers. So I know the rivalry between the Brewers and the Cubs. I know that everybody always talks about the Cardinals and the Cubs being a huge rivalry, but the Brewers and the Cubs is definitely a big rivalry as well. Good for him getting the money. I mean, I still think that if Torre hasn't been a manager for a long time. So I still think in 2023 dollars, I think Torre probably still ended up with a better deal, but still to be the highest paid manager in the game and to haven't won a World Series yet, that's I guess that's impressive for him.
Yeah. Listen, I just heard a couple of interviews. The GM meeting started this week in Arizona, and David Stearns is talking as the Mets POBO, president of baseball operations. And they asked him, what do you think about Craig Counsell going to the Cubs? I mean, he just worked with them for his whole career. And he said he was shocked. He did not see that coming because no one did. But when you take a step back, I think we all would have done the same thing. He did what was right by him and his family. He got paid. He wanted to be around his family. And, at the end of the day, players do it all the time. They take the top dollar, and geographically, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it did. And other than that, I don't see anything wrong with it. The only thing I don't know, and it's not confirmed, whether he allowed the Brewers to match it. Because if you're there 7 years and you have a good standing relationship with your owner and GM, who is, not Matt Arnold, I believe his name is, their GM, who took over for Stearns. That's the only thing I would hope that he said, hey, you want to match $8 million a year to pay me? I don't know if that happened. But he took care of his family, and I can't honestly say there's anything wrong with that.
Well, I would think that if Cohen didn't match that offer, that the Brewers probably weren't going to match that offer either. But it makes sense for him. Probably quite a few teams out there that are a little upset that they didn't get probably the hottest guy on the market. But good for him. And now the Mets obviously have made a decision, and they've got their new manager.
I'm glad that you brought that up because the Mets, how they tie into this is that everyone thought Counsell was going to go to the Mets because of the David Stearns tie. Obviously, he did not. He took everybody by surprise. And I didn't even bring this up, but, they had a manager, by the way, David Ross, who they basically said, goodbye, we're hiring someone better than you, or we want more than you. And to me, that wasn't classy. it was, I don't know how they went around it, closed doors, but they had a manager. It's not like they had an open vacancy. So that was a little weird. And
I mean, I guess they can say that over past performance, other than this year, and then falling short this year, that there was a right for termination. And if they felt like there was a better candidate out there, they were going to do what they feel was best for the organization. Yeah. I always kind of see Ross more as a TV personality as a manager. I don't know him, so I could be wrong, but it's obviously been hard to win in Chicago. But now that they got the taste of that World Series, I think the expectations are higher every year than they may have been in years past or decades past.
So going back to what I was going to say, bless you, or whatever that was.
It's a cough.
Well, bless you anyway. Going back with the tie-in with the Mets, Steve Cohen, as you mentioned before, we all thought that maybe Counsell, just like players in the past, or whatever other personalities, have used the Mets and Cohen mostly for his deep pockets. It turns out this did not happen. The Mets made their offer. It is confirmed way less than $8 million, and Steve Cohen was not going to allow Craig Counsell to use him as leverage to get more money, which I'm very happy to hear, because players and agents have done that in the past. And I think, and I can be wrong, I was not on the phone call and I was not in person in their meetings, but Steve Cohen's a shark. He's worth $19 billion for a reason. I'm sure he realized right away that Counsell's heart wasn't in New York, and he probably was like, well, if that's not the case, why the hell am I going to offer this guy $8 million a year or whatever he wants? So I'm happy to hear that Steve Cohen was not used as leverage and bait for other people's agendas. And that's, a good thing, because it shows to everybody else, you can't use my deep pockets, because I'm going to outsmart you. We've been here. I've learned my lesson. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Part of it could be that Stearns wanted to, it could be that. It could be Counsell didn't, Midwest guy didn't want to be on the East Coast. And it could be Stearns wants somebody like Mendoza, who he hired, who he can have his finger on the pulse of what's going on, maybe a little bit more than maybe there is some underlying things with Counsell that were going on in Baltimore. In Milwaukee, being that now that Counsell is, a veteran manager, he probably wants a little bit more of a say, and maybe that's not the way that Stearns wants to look at things. And the owner, Cohen, has all of his trust in Stearns.
Well, it crosses off Craig Counsell, a lot of moving parts in the managerial, musical chairs with Counsell. Now to the Cubs, opening in Milwaukee. Stephen Vogt went to Cleveland, that had a vacancy. He former played for a lot of teams, actually. Two-time All-Star. He's the new manager, first-time manager with the Guardians. And, that leaves now the I agree with Andy Martino, who's a reporter for SNY. After Counsell went to the Cubs, if the Mets didn't sign Carlos Mendoza, who was the hot commodity after Counsell, there's no question that the Brewers would have went after Mendoza and probably overpay for him. So that brings us, I don't know if you agree with that, but that brings us to the Mets have a new manager. Carlos Mendoza, come on down. And a lot of people don't know about Carlos Mendoza, but I know it was. It took me a little while to be like, what just happened? We went from Craig Counsell talk, Buck Showalter last year, 101 win season the year before, to basically a guy who anyone would tell you they don't know much about.
I know him. I played with him in winter ball.
Please tell us.
He was a good guy, good infielder, had a minor league career. The game has changed. That's all I'm going to say. I think that there's, I'd like to see this team under a veteran manager. But that's not for me to decide. I think that obviously you got to start somewhere. And
they all do.
Mendoza's going to start here. As an old crotchety former Major League Baseball player, I'm not a huge fan of non-former major leaguers telling major leaguers how to play in the major leagues, because you don't know what it's like standing in that box or fielding that ground ball.
Yeah.
You do it at a certain level, but not at the third deck level. But I hope for the best. You know who my guy was, Ron Washington. Obviously, he's never going to get a chance again, which I think is a crying shame because the people that I heard he's on the Angels list. But like you said last week, the Mets have to interview a minority, so I hope that that's not the case and it's actually a real deal that he's on that list there because I think he deserves another chance.
Yeah, you mean the Angels have to?
The Angels, yes.
Right.
Well, you said the Mets had to last week, so obviously the Angels have to as well do the same rule.
Right. So, Ron Washington.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be a first year guy that you might have never even heard of because that seems to be the way.
Showalter and Ron Washington are in the hat for the Angels. Whoever wants to take over that fiasco, good luck. You know.
Yeah.
Buck clearly wants to manage. I don't know if Ron Washington wants to leave where he is in Atlanta for that fiasco in Southern California. But good luck to them if they do.
Sorry, back to Mendoza though, because that's the most important thing. It's neither here nor there what those guys are doing. He was a young player when I played with him in Venezuela. This was back in 04, 05. And obviously he's been a bench coach now for years under Boone. And I don't know, man. I don't know. That's not where I would have went. But I guess it makes sense in this day and age where the front office has way more control as to what's going on inside the dugout than they did in years past. Yeah,
and it's a good point. And let's just get this out of the way. The Mets have hired now 5 different managers in 6 seasons. And 4 of those 5 were first-time managers. The only one that wasn't was Buck Showalter. You had Beltran, 77 days, and then the whole cheating scandal came out. Luis Rojas, before that was Mickey Callaway, Buck, now Carlos Mendoza, first-time manager. That's a lot of freaking managers in a 6-year span. I mean, you only could have one more. I mean, that's insane. So here we are, first-time manager. Now, yes, bench coach to to Aaron Boone, and it's not like the Yankees have been doing well. They actually had a horrible year last year, not making the playoffs, and they haven't won crap since 2009. But everyone says that Mendoza is ready for it. They'll say that for every first-time manager. I get it.
I wonder what Eric Chavez thinks about that, if he's ready for it or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So you brought up a good point. Managers, the front offices take over now in this day and age. Analytics, David Stearns is very analytical, and even Buck said when he was fired, he aired some laundry out. He wasn't making the lineups. It was the front office analytical department.
Well, I was going to say something about that because I feel like they had the old manager, even though he didn't play in the major leagues. He was an All-American in college, and he's already established himself as a manager. I believe he was handcuffed quite a bit, and I think the difference between his say from year 1 to his say in year 2 was quite different. I'm sure that he probably didn't agree with the no batting practice or the guys not coming out and getting ready. But I think the analytics, for some reason, were telling him that that's the way you got to go about things. I don't know, man. I think baseball's in a weird place where people that didn't play are telling people that played how to do things. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. It never will.
I'm with you. Back in the days where, we sound like 2 old men, when you were playing and I was watching, it was Bobby Valentine was making the lineup cards for the Mets and everything about it. There was no analytical department, punching up the lineup card and then him, writing it. Now it is. And I think that's what helped Carlos Mendoza get this job because, well, he's under Brett Boone for 4 years and the Yankees are literally obsessed with analytics. So he was a perfect candidate for David Stearns, who wants to control what he can, which is honestly everything, if he chooses.
It seems that way. What I don't understand is the guys that did play and they pay attention, you're basically telling them that they don't know what they're looking at, and then their experience means absolutely nothing. And the fact that somebody that didn't play who can crunch numbers, you're telling me that the person that did play isn't capable of looking at a spreadsheet or looking at statistics and making his own decisions through the numbers as well as experience. So again, like I said, I'm never going to understand it. Maybe it's not for me to understand anymore.
Yeah, imagine Buck Showalter, who's been in this business forever, giving him a lineup card, telling him who to play, and then also you have to go with this game plan in mind, or this is why we hired you. This is the deal.
I'm pretty sure that Buck Showalter can remember what so and so did against so and so.
Yeah.
For so and so many times.
Right.
And that's why you used to pay a manager. It was for him to know those things through him sitting in the dugout and watching, and then him watching video and watching scouting reports and watching things that are going on. So I don't know where it went. It went a different direction, and you're basically telling the guys that are the dumb jocks that they're just dumb jocks.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me.
So, I mean, that helped Mendoza, obviously, with analytical department, and all that. And I hate to put it this way because, we don't know all the facts, but managers lately are puppets to the analytical department and whoever else, the powers that may be. And now, while I hear all the good things about Mendoza, he's sharp, he's intelligent, he's been through it all. I get it, but like I said before,
he's not been through it all.
Right, he hasn't. He hasn't
played in the major leagues, and he hasn't managed yet.
Exactly. So the only thing that I could do at this point is accept David Stearns' decision, because if I put it this way, if I trust David Stearns and Steve Cohen to hire David Stearns, then I have no choice, and I look like a coward if I can't trust David Stearns in his first big move as the president of baseball operations.
Yeah, I think this is a big move for him. This is a big step, and you earn trust. I don't know if trust has been earned yet. We're still getting to know each other here a little bit. So this is a big step. And obviously it's also sending a huge message as to what's going on and who's going to really be in control. So he is taking a roll of the dice, and it's either going to pay off for him or it's not.
Right. So, I mean, manager had to get done. It did. We knew it would. I will put faith in David Stearns and his decision. I also will tell you that what is most important over that, not that manager is not a big deal, because it is. Look at Bruce Bochy and look what the Rangers did. And the Astros the year before with Dusty and all that. Free agency started, this week. And those are the bigger moves that I think obviously will shape a World Series roster. So we are officially underway of 2024 free agency. No moves have been made. And the bigger moves usually come in the beginning, mid to December, around the winter meetings. But a little news in Metland, just in terms of opt-ins and opt-outs. You have Brooks Raley, who the Mets picked up the club option of $6.5 million, team option. That's a no-brainer. He pitched well last year, lefty. And he was one of the rare players who actually pitched well in the beginning of the year when they were competing. So I'm glad to have Raley back.
Yeah, I agree.
And Ottavino actually opted out of his $7 million contract, which was surprising. But words come out now that he tried to rearrange and renegotiate that contract with deferred money and this and that. And the Mets said no. So he declined it. And now Ottavino is a free agent. So what that tells me, Bill, other than Raley and Edwin Diaz, who still is a question mark, because he hasn't pitched in 2022, coming off the knee, they have an entire bullpen to fill. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, they got a lot of work to do. They got a lot of work to do in a lot of categories. Obviously, the first peg is in order. First block has been put in there with the hiring of the manager, and now they're going to have to start putting together a ball club.
And honestly, as a Met fan, I'm happy. I shouldn't say happy, but I'm not sad to see Ottavino go. Once they implemented the pitch clock, Ottavino could not hold a base runner for the life of him. He couldn't do it before the pitch clock was implemented, and not even the pitch clock. I misspoke. More of the throwing over 3 times the first case, all that.
I think that's actually going to be, and I think we might have mentioned it. That's going to be a big shift that you're going to see over the next. Hopefully, it's got to be the next year, because the pitchers are going to have to make an adjustment back, and it's obviously going to be back to quickening the delivery, and that's something that obviously Ottavino struggled with.
Yeah, so other than basically an entire bullpen, half the lineup, 60% of a starting rotation, an entire bench, that's light work for one person in David Stearns. No worries.
Yeah, it makes you a little concerned, especially after watching the teams that were playing in the playoffs and seeing where they're at, and they're, kind of solid in their rosters right now. And the Mets are definitely have a lot of question marks and it's a lot of voids to fill.
But there is a reason Steve Cohen hired Stearns. Stearns is a general manager at face value, player of baseball operations to everyone listening. Honestly, it's just a fancier fucking name to say GM. That's all it really is. And then people will say, well, what does the GM do? Well, it's the bitch work that the player of baseball operations doesn't want to do. That's what it is. Full stop, So again, I trust Cohen to trust Stearns to make this roster work.
Fingers crossed.
They have all the resources to do so.
Yeah.
And with free agency starting now, at any moment, there could be a signing. I doubt it here in November, but you never know. I mean, you know how it goes. Dominoes usually fall when the big guys fall, and that is Ohtani, Yamamoto, the bigger stars. Once that happens, everything falls after that. So whenever that happens, it happens.
Yeah, and I think that they even the big name guys kind of wait for the first big name to drop before they, so it's like a little bit of a standoff. And then once the ball gets rolling, but you're right. Winter meetings is usually when things really, really heat up and the hot stove gets going.
Yeah. And also it was said, I brought up GM in the Mets. David Stearns was quoted in his first day in Arizona after GM meetings that there will be no GM for the Mets. They will not search. He will be the GM, if you will, which I just said what it means. They don't have the quote-unquote time. They have other things to worry about, which is true, like building an entire roster in the offseason. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. They don't have time for that. They got to start getting to work and start filling the roster out.
Yep. Other news that came out, which is big, more so for the fans. Steve Cohen announced a proposal on Tuesday about what is called he's proposing the Metropolitan Park. I don't know if you saw this.
I did.
It is $8 billion invested from Steve over 50 acres of land, and it will be 20 acres of parking space, which I believe would be a parking garage, which sucks. People who have, know where the park and all that under the Whitestone Express, I won't go there. Can't give out that secret. Kind of did.
I actually know that area.
Yeah. But other things, just to list them off so people who are not familiar, it's called Entertainment Complex and Infrastructure. The centerpiece around it, a casino and a hotel subject to New York gaming licensing, which is a huge moneymaker, of course, and deal. Bars, restaurants, hotel towers, the sports book, a playground, bike paths, and this is the big one, a renovated and accessible train station, which only could help mass transit, Queens Hall food space, and a live music venue. So he's trying to basically turn all the auto body shops that we see behind Shea Stadium back in the day and Citi Field now into, Disneyland, whatever.
An attraction. I think it's great. I mean, obviously it sucks for the businesses that are going to be there, but we all can agree that it's a little bit of an eyesore, and it's not the best. When you see the stadium, it's not like. And this is one thing I always liked about Coors Field. It's almost like Coors Field was when you go there. There's bars, there's restaurants, there's everything all around the stadium. So it brings people in before games. It keeps people there after games. I think it's a tremendous idea, and I think it's exciting. And hopefully it comes to fruition. And it would make the going to Flushing more of an attraction for non-baseball fans as well as baseball fans to go there and see the whole thing and get food and drink and entertainment. I think it's all positive stuff.
Chicago has that, the restaurant, bars. It's a good look, and it's a good point by you for even non-bet fans. Now it could be an attraction. Hey, let's grab a bite to eat and a drink and catch a Met game.
And then go catch a ball game. Exactly. I think it's great.
It'll take time, obviously. It's just a proposal. He's been talking about it for years, ever since he took over, which is 3 years ago, almost to the day, where it's like, well, if you need your muffler, worked on, come to our ballpark. No, he wants to build, like you said, an attraction. So it came out today exactly what it would be. They already have a field being made for, I believe, an MLS soccer team next to it. That's a big deal, too. So he doesn't just own the Mets. He's trying to make the whole landscape of what, like back in '64 with the World's Fair, in Arthur Ashe Stadium, a whole big, attraction for so many different people. It's nice to see.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Let's go into our favorite segment. We know what that is. It's called the mailbag.
Yes, sir.
And every week we ask our followers on Twitter and Instagram at Shay_hello on Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter, called X now, and Shay Hello Media on Instagram. If you have any questions for us, mainly Bill, please ask them on reply to the tweet, and we will read them live on the air. True to our word, we are going to do that once again. You ready, Bill?
I'm ready.
Should we start with your boy again?
Absolutely. Let him know
All
let him know that his mail has been returned as well.
All right. Definitely will. That's very nice of you, and I definitely will let him know. NYMGI. Hey, Bill, with several Japanese pitchers rumored to come over, I was wondering what it's like for them to come over, and do certain players try to get more involved? How does one take their time to get acclimated or become a member of the team, and how does that work out for coming from a different country?
Yeah, I think it's obviously you have the Latino players, and then Asian players, and then American players, and obviously some other countries thrown in there. Japanese and Asian players are a little bit different than the Latin players. The Latin players tend to have a little bit more flair, where the Asian players are usually a little bit more subdued. But I think the majority of everybody always tries to reach a hand out and try to talk. And my way was always trying to learn a few words, in their language, and try to help them maybe learn a few words in English, and then something maybe you can joke about, to have that connection. I played with Hideo Nomo. I played with quite a few Korean guys as well. Every single one of them was a gentleman. Every single one of them was a professional. Never a bad guy in the bunch. And I think, like I said, I think the majority of people try to ingrain themselves or endear themselves to their new teammates. Obviously, a language barrier is tough, but they do have the interpreter around, so you like to try to get to know the interpreter as well as you can, so you can kind of joke around with him to pass the jokes along. And then I have noticed that a lot of the Asian guys have a tendency to be very interested in trying to learn as much English as they can. They do say English is a difficult language to understand or to learn, but like I said, definitely try to get the guys integrated as soon as possible.
So you played with Hideo Nomo, I believe, with the Brewers in '99. Is that right?
Yeah, and in 01 with the Red Sox.
Okay,
yep.
And he was a special player, coming over from Japan. I read something today about David Stearns just wanting to talk with Kodai Senga. Perfect example. In Japan, they're used to 4 days off, then have their start, which is different than here. Which
5 days.
5 days.
Yeah.
So it's
four states. Yep.
6-man rotation.
Right.
Basically, it would Kodai would be different than anyone else. So Stearns wanted to talk over because, well, Yamamoto would be the same thing. So you got 40% of your starting pitchers who cannot go until every 6th day. Then,
there's going to come a point where that's the case now because of the minor leagues as well. So what are we going to do? I think that it's looking like it's going to be a 6-man rotation at some point in time because they play 6 days during the week in the minor leagues now. And I don't know, maybe they do still keep you on once every 5 days. And I guess every turn you maybe get an extra day, which isn't bad. But it's definitely a getting used to, because there's been plenty of times in my career where that 4th day you're thinking, oh my God, how in the world am I going to pitch tomorrow? My body feels like shit. There's no way I'm going to be ready to go. And then some days that very next day you come back and you feel great. And then there's other times where, oh shit, I didn't recover. I'm still battling.
Yeah, I hear you. So I think that's all encompassed about coming over from other countries and the language barrier, and even going every 5th or 6th day. So good question once again from NYMGI. Your mail is received and returned back. I'll get that information over to you. And thanks again for the question. We'll move on. A couple more questions we have. This one's from Jake. Bill, were you ever ejected in a game? And if not, or even if you have, do you have any funny stories about any of that?
I was never ejected in the major leagues. I was ejected in the minor leagues and independent ball. Mostly, obviously, for arguing balls and strikes as a pitcher. I do have a little funny story about I was coaching actually in independent baseball, and I was a pitching coach in Winnipeg, and I had an issue with the balls and strikes pretty much all game. It got late in the game and tight game, and I thought a curveball was called a strike. It probably went around the plate and was a ball, but I had enough. So I made a big stink about it, and I always thought, you know what? I remember as a kid, Earl Weaver and the guys, the managers that would get thrown out of games, kicking dirt over home plate.
Lou Piniella, Billy Martin.
Billy Martin. I was drawing a blank there, but that's what I wanted to say, Billy Martin. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to go classic. I'm going to run out there. I'm going to tell them that we don't need this plate anyway because you can't see it anyways. And I did the classic kick dirt over home plate, and that was my best and funniest ejection, I guess.
So man, you kicked dirt over it to make it disappear like it wasn't there.
Well, I say it doesn't matter anyway because you're not using the plate anyway, so it doesn't matter whether you can see it or not.
Yeah, I get it. Classic. Yep. Good story. Good question. Thank you, Jake. We'll move on. We got a couple more we'll get to. Jimmy Lags wants to know, Bill, best pitcher you ever saw? Now, I don't know what he means by that, so we can interpret it as played with, saw as a fan growing up. Take it as you will.
I'll just do it as who I saw personally in the ballpark from a dugout or from the batter's box.
Okay.
I would say the nastiest guy I ever saw, not in the batter's box, would be Randy Johnson. I saw him throw a 13-14 strikeout, 2-hit shutout in Houston when he got traded to Houston in '99 in the Astrodome, and I thought, how in the world does anybody hit that? Another one would be Billy Wagner. The first time I saw Billy Wagner in person from the dugout, again, how in the world does anybody hit that?
Right.
The nastiest, best pitcher I ever saw from the batter's box would be Pedro. And he was everything, everything and some. And being a pitcher where you're not known for hitting anyway, I really stood no chance. Second nastiest that I saw from the batter's box would have been Kevin Brown, and he had just phenomenal stuff, heavy, hard movement, a lot of sink, and just a nasty son of a bitch too.
Yeah, all those pitchers, man. I couldn't imagine being in the batter's box facing any one of them.
Yeah,
so,
scary.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume you never got a hit off of any of them or anything.
I didn't get hit off of those guys. I did not. No.
Do you remember your first hit?
I do.
Juan
Acevedo, I hit a double over Dante Bichette's head at Shea Stadium.
You still have the ball?
Somewhere.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, somewhere.
That's
and when I ran into second base, they played my walkout song, which at the time was "Even in His Youth" by Nirvana, and I think Fred Wilpon was pissed off because it's a pretty heavy tune. If you have time, check out "Even in His Youth."
I will, and let's not go there.
It's just heavy,
heavy.
Heavy. I don't want to say heavy metal because Nirvana wasn't metal, but it's a heavy song.
I totally get it. I get it. Last question. We have time for one more. Jeff Cohen, he has a question for you. Hey, Bill, I heard the Mets, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard the Mets were overusing their pitchers in the minor leagues. Do you subscribe to that assessment?
I saw this question. I meant to look into the innings pitched for the pitchers this year in the minor leagues, and I forgot. But I'll tell you this: it ain't anywhere close to what I was doing when I was throwing 200 innings in a minor league season. I know that the majority of minor leagues, the organizations now trying to keep their guys between 75 and 100 innings in a season and pretty much shut them down. I don't know about nowadays. I could look back in my time and say, looking back, obviously probably overused, too young. Never blaming anybody though, because when you get the ball and you're a competitor, you want to go out there and you want to try to finish what you started. You're at least shooting for 7 innings. I think what we saw that obviously baseball's changed, especially in the playoffs. We're having in the major leagues, we're having bullpen games in the playoffs.
Crazy,
which is a shame. But I highly doubt they're overusing their pitchers. I think that my elbow and Izzy's elbow and Wilson's elbow and shoulder and that, I think that was a turning point. And I think if anything, pitchers are probably a little underused now, and they're more throwers. And they try to protect, for injury. But unfortunately, when you're just a thrower and you're max effort all the time, that injuries have a tendency to happen just as much, if not more.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't agree with that assessment from whoever's saying that they overuse their pitchers.
I highly doubt it.
No, I mean they track everything,
Yep.
And so innings pitched is number one, and that includes bullpens, times you're throwing on the mound to warm up, anything. So I highly doubt,
I highly doubt it too.
Yeah.
If anything, I would think it would probably tend to lean towards the not overuse side as opposed to the overuse side.
Yeah, totally agree. So good question, Jeff Cohen. Thank you all for the questions to Bill. That completes the segment of the mailbag. Again, if you have any questions for us, every podcast, you can ask us at Shay_hello on Twitter, formerly known as X, or Twitter, now called X. Thank you all for the questions. Let's move on to our last segment, Bill's favorite. Actually, I don't know what's your favorite, mailbag or quick pitches.
The whole thing is my favorite.
That's a very PC answer. I like it. Let's go with 3 questions. Bill doesn't know what they are. He doesn't know what's coming. And we'll start with number 1. Bill, what are 2 things still on your bucket list that you would like to accomplish?
Accomplish or do?
Do. Accomplish. Whatever you would like. Whatever.
I would like to go to Peru and see Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman and Cusco. I'd like to see that.
Okay.
I'd like to become a grandfather and get to help raise my grandkids.
Perfect. Those are good answers, and I hope they come to fruition. Number 2. Number 2. What rule do you live by, if at all? Do you have a rule, advice that someone gave you that you keep close to your heart? The rule that you keep close to your heart?
I think, and I'm not a really religious guy or a Bible guy, but I think that do unto others as you would like done unto you. I think that's a good one. I think that's a good rule to live by.
Yeah, treat others like you would like to be treated.
Don't tread on anybody else. Leave everybody, you don't want anybody treading on you. Don't tread on anybody else. And,
totally agree.
Treat people how you would like to be treated.
Life is not a straight and narrow path,
No, it's not.
Ups and downs, and, everyone's going through something at different points. So treat people like you would be treated. I totally respect that.
Thank you.
Last question. What is the best gift you ever received in your life from anyone?
My children, from my wife.
Wow, I hope she listens to that. That's a great answer. And your kids. That's a perfect answer. Yeah. End of story. Like, lock down on the quick pitches on that. Perfect
there
answer.
You go.
And I know it's true. So, good. That was quick pitches. And Bill
they were quick today, too.
What was that?
They were quick today, too.
Yeah, they fully got the quick pitches lived up to its name. So, that's going to do it for episode 14, the Shay Hello podcast, brought to you by roots-recordings.com. 14 in the books. I know Bill won't be with us next week, as Bill is going to Bet's Fantasy Camp as, what do they call you when you go over there? An instructor?
A coach.
A coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although you really don't use the word coach in pro ball. You don't call your coach your coach. You usually go by your nickname or your name. Yeah. But we're coaches down there. Okay. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's fun every year. I'm so blessed and so lucky to have this opportunity and to get to know a lot of Mets fans and get to see some of my old teammates and some of my heroes from when I was growing up. So it's a blast every year, and I look forward to it every year.
Yeah, Port St. Lucie, get out of the New York, whatever, middle season, if you will, not too hot.
It's actually like back to my old home. I lived in St. Lucie for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So it's always special for me to, and I feel like I grew up there because, at 17, I signed and I was down in the minor league clubhouse. So when I go back there, it brings back a lot of memories and a lot of nostalgia.
Hang out with a bunch of former teammates or guys that you see all the time when you go there.
I actually,
awesome.
Quick story, because I know we're going to wrap this up. when Buck came in, he changed all the numbers to all the fields to the minor league complex. And I'm interested to see if they change them back, because those fields were there before Buck and those fields are there after Buck. And they were originally numbered a certain way. And one thing we know about Buck was Buck is very tedious about the way he likes to have things. So I have a friend in the that works for the grounds crew, and when Buck got let go, I asked him, "You think they're going to change the numbers of the fields back?" And he says they haven't yet, but I'm hopeful that they change everything back to the way Port St. Lucie was when it all started over there.
Yeah, I actually remember them talking about that and then doing it. I've been at spring training in Port St. Lucie as a fan for the last 3 years, and then when I was growing up, 5 years in a row, around the time, a little after that you were playing as a Met. But great times over there. So
Yeah.
have a blast at Mets Fantasy Camp. Enjoy the sunshine, and we'll have you back, I guess, in 2 weeks or so on the Shay Low podcast. Bring back a tan for us, please.
I'll have at least my face and my arms. I can't guarantee the rest of the body.
I know, but no, I don't see Bill Pulsifer walking around, what's it called, Clover Park, just with no shirt on,
No, those days are done. Those days are done. It probably happened in the past, but it ain't happening anymore.
Thank God. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That's going to wrap it up. So I want to thank, of course, Bill Pulsifer, Steve White, our producer behind the scenes, everyone listening on Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, of course. And, of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, we try to be better looking, but there's not much we can do about it unless we want to pay a lot of money. And that, of course,
even that doesn't work.
If you are on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed what you just saw and heard. Again, brought to you by roots-recordings.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Any last words, Bill, before you take off to the sunny skies of the Sunshine State?
Same thing. Thanks for everybody for listening, and I hope everybody enjoyed.
Well said. Thanks again for everyone listening. We'll catch you next week on the Shay Low podcast. Be safe and have a great rest of your day, everybody.